Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, where we prove time and time again the value of independent polling and media. And today is one of those times. It's the time when information ops are being thrown at you faster and faster. And without people like us, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't already. How would you know that you were being gaslit to? Just a month ago, we had the, no, don't believe your eyes. There was no way Trump was actually shot. To then a senator who served his country in the Marine Corps is totally weird, guys. To Kamala Harris is the second coming of Barack Obama. And now the one you're subject to is Kamala Harris is actually winning in the polls. And I'm here to tell you she really isn't. But the first place we're going to go to look into whether she is or not is the Real Clear Politics polling aggregate. This is the aggregate that Rasmussen Reports endorses. We think the other people are pretty dodgy. So anyways, this is the way the website looked this morning. And if you see what we have here, the last 6 polls, a solid wall of blue with Kamala Harris winning from 1 to 4 points and putting her up 0.8 points in the aggregate. Now, right off the top, I'll tell you, even if she was winning 0.8 points, that's still a horrible sign for Democrats showing an utter collapse. Look up here, this day in history, 4 years ago, Joe Biden was winning by over 7 points more. And 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton was winning by a whopping 8 points more than Kamala Harris theoretically is today. The second thing I'd point out to you here is that there's only one other poll up here that is likely voters. Everybody else is polling registered voters. We've gone into that before. Another thing is that many of these organizations are corporate entities or have a deep well of public funding. We are, in my honest opinion, the only pollsters on here whose business will shut down if we fail to be accurate. In fact, all of the funding for the numbers I'm going to talk about today came solely from subscription and advertising revenue. Do you think Morning Consult is worried about subscription or advertising revenue? They absolutely 100% are not. Also, with how tight the race has been, I'm really surprised that there are no other polls that show Trump up at all. Now, I can't know the internals of every single one of these polls and what they're potentially doing wrong. And even in their disclosures, you wouldn't be able to know. But don't you find it suspicious that even though Joe Biden, we've been told, has been losing recently in the polls, and all of Joe Biden's administration, we've been told that Kamala Harris is less likable than him, and here she is winning all of a sudden? Let me tell you, if there was 1 week in this entire election cycle where you were going to get the most bang for your buck by putting out a crap poll, this would be the week. And I think you would find a lot of stuff like that. Things you'll find potentially is an increase in Democrat weighting in these polls week over week. Maybe they had less Democrat weighting 2 or 3 weeks ago with Biden. I'm sure you'll find some polls where maybe they threw out more survey respondents than they did in the past. They can also do things like play with the mix of where all their online panel results come from. And another thing I'm seeing here is, believe it or not, we're talking now the morning of August 8th, and the most recent polling is only out the 4th. And most of the stuff here is almost a week old. In fact, half of it is a week old. Don't you think that's kind of crazy too? Didn't you expect there'd be more polling after this historic shift in Democrat candidates? Maybe if you find a result you want, you just sort of hang on to those numbers and let it drift. But not Rasmussen Reports. We're putting out numbers every Thursday for the rest of the election season, and we're going to show you the overnight results as they develop as well. One final point here, don't be swayed by sample size. You may not have had this explained to you, but there is a difference between accuracy and precision. And here's a pretty good example. This is precise and accurate. All of the shots are hitting the target. A larger poll is going to be more precise, meaning it's going to have less of a margin of error and more repeatable results. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that poll or that pollster or that methodology doesn't have an accuracy problem. And that's what we're seeing in the lower right hand here. Really precise shots, but not on the target. Anyways, here is how the Real Clear Politics aggregate looks now, and we're tipping our hand a little bit, but now there are 2 new polls showing Trump up, and one of those is ours, and you can see the results right there. We're going to get in the crosstabs in a minute, but it looks like CNBC came out with a poll that has Trump up too as well. Although I will state, we are the only data on this page that is more recent than August the 4th. Now, another thing I want to talk about quick is Polymarket's betting prediction. And this is basically people come in and bet who they think is going to win the presidency, and it swings all over the place. It shows something kind of different than pollsters. People say that this is more accurate because people are betting with their actual money. I don't know about that because pretty much every market on earth is manipulated. But what is interesting to me is back almost 2 weeks ago when Kamala Harris became the candidate, the betting markets actually stayed kind of steady with Trump up about 20 to 25 points. But then all of a sudden, about August 2nd, and even more the 3rd through the 4th, Trump lost his lead and Kamala Harris is now tied with Trump on the betting site. Now, I'm sure these things lag and take time to swing as well, but what it appears perhaps is that even though people look to the betting sites for up-to-the-minute expectations of who's going to win, and even though some people, in my opinion, erroneously say this is more accurate, it looks to me like all of that pro-Kamala Harris polling is what moved the betting markets. But anyway, let's get into the crosstabs of our latest release. This is August 1st and 4th through 7th, so a total of 5 nights of results. If the 2024 election were between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, who would you vote for? 49% say Donald Trump, 44% say Kamala Harris. So Trump is leading by 5 points in a two-way matchup and still taking home 49 or 50% of the vote, which is quite frankly where he's been. And Kamala Harris or Joe Biden has been pretty much in the mid to low 40s. Donald Trump is now winning again among women by 3 points, is winning again among 18 to 39-year-olds by 5 points, is winning a little bit less among middle-aged voters. That could be noise of the poll. Is still taking home 30% of the black vote, is absolutely crushing it by 15 points among Hispanic voters. And listen, I'll be honest, these are national polls. There's really no way I can also cue in specifically to try and get an exact sample of what the Hispanic population is. You know, there's Spanish-speaking Hispanics. There's Hispanics that don't necessarily consider themselves Hispanic. It's really nebulous moving thing. But I mean, you know, this is massively up here. If Trump beats Kamala Harris among Hispanics, it will be absolutely historic because keep in mind, they've been telling us that this influx of immigration over the southern border is going to create a permanent Democrat supermajority. And we are seeing nothing of the type, folks. But here are the party numbers, and Kamala Harris is only taking home 80% of the Democrat vote, but Donald Trump's taking home 84% of the Republican vote. So Trump's up 71 points among Republicans, and Kamala Harris is up 66 points among Democrats. So that's a 5-point crossover advantage in Donald Trump's favor. And Donald Trump is back to leading among independent voters by double digits. Here, a 13-point majority. And I've been watching the independents most closely and telling you over and over again, Kamala Harris cannot win without winning a majority of independents. And when you do things like pander to your leftist base or pick super left vice presidential candidates, you are not helping yourself with independents. We've been talking a bit about the economy too. I thought this income signal was pretty interesting. Donald Trump leads with every single human being that makes less than $200,000 a year. Kamala Harris does best with the upper income crowds by a massive margin, but she also loses least by the under 30,000 crowd, showing that her base is mostly comprised of the elite and most likely recipients of federal aid. Here are the multi-way matchups, and last time it was about 1.5 points, but Donald Trump is back up to a 5-point lead in the multi-way matchup. Pretty sure I was correct when I called that last result noise. Kennedy is only taking home 3% of the vote, which is the first time we've seen a 3% number for him in one of our major polls. This is about 1,800 likely voters. Nobody in the world is voting for any of these third-party characters. That is insane. But again, it's because we've been telling you this is mostly a referendum on MAGA versus the Democrat machine. Most of the numbers look the same here, which I like. It makes it more consistent, although Hispanic voters go less for Donald Trump because they seem to support RFK quite a bit here. And Donald Trump still has an 11-point lead among independent voters, with RFK taking only 6% of independents. Now, numbers are great, but I also have some charts for you that, in my opinion, show exactly what's going on here. This is the nightly Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump tracker, where we treat each night as its own individual poll so that we can see trend data. And you will not see any trend data like this coming from any other pollster on earth, because they're just doing one massive weekly poll and then throwing that garbage over the fence. And here we show that when Kamala Harris was first anointed as the new Democrat candidate without any primary votes, there was some initial reticence, and Donald Trump was winning by 16 points. But because of the positive press, because of the Obama endorsement, she actually rapidly gained ground and for a few nights was beating Donald Trump in our nightly matchups. But since then, her support has faded, and Donald Trump has very rapidly climbed back. Now, again, because they're smaller samples, because of the larger margin of error, these things do have noise. But now for the first time, I've added a 3-period moving average on here, and you really can see the Kamala Harris bounce and its rapid petering out, for lack of a better word. Here are all the direct Kamala Harris and Joe Biden versus Donald Trump polls from this entire cycle. And you can see the challenge of polling presidential races early in the cycle. They really swing all over the place and didn't solidify till about January. And despite all of the chaos, really, we're only got 5 data points over here to the right, which happened after Joe Biden's debate. You can see very clearly that Donald Trump's support has really lasered in on that 49% number. And it looks like Kamala Harris is sort of topping out at about 44% now. And the margin of errors are tracked on here in the dotted lines. And Donald Trump's victory is outside of the margin of error pretty comfortably. Now, you may not have followed us before. You may not have heard us respond to the slanders of right-wing polling. We're not right-wing pollsters. We want to be accurate, and we think our polling from the last 2 presidential matchups proves that we were accurate. These are the 5-period moving averages from all of our polling in 2016 and 2020 and now this year. In 2016, you can see we hit it. Our polling average was almost exactly on the final reported popular vote margin. In 2020, believe it or not, the average of our polling actually leaned a little bit over 1.5 points to left and was too favorable to Joe Biden. During that cycle, we were weighted Democrat +4. We're actually weighted Democrat +2 right now. So in our opinion, we've removed any left-wing bias that we had and should be dead accurate right now. And if you look at what's happening, you can really see the state of the race. Donald Trump started in 2016 with about 40% of the electorate. In 2020, he was taking home about 44% of the electorate. And now he is up to 48 to 49% solidly and comfortably in this race. And the Democrats, their support has collapsed. Joe Biden really did come out of nowhere in 2020 and take just a huge amount of electoral support. But right now, Biden and Harris is polling just about the same as Hillary Clinton did back in 2016. And we all know what happened there. Now, you can also see this blue line shooting up at the end. Kamala Harris, her support has been going up, but these are a little shifted because of the way the moving average works. So her climb isn't as severe as it appears in this chart. Now, I'm going to pull these charts out. We haven't looked at them in a while, but these are all updated. These are the 5-period moving averages for all of the demographics that the Democrats do not want to lose. And right now, it appears that Donald Trump is really solidly winning among Hispanic and other race voters by a massive margin. I mean, the average is comfortably a 10-point lead for Trump. And that you can say, all right, well, your poll might be a little too favorable to Republicans among Hispanic voters. We did show them roughly tied in 2020, and we showed Hillary Clinton winning massively among Hispanic voters in 2016. Here are the results for 18 to 39-year-old voters. Again, a demographic group that historically has leaned very left, and it shows them voting for Hillary Clinton by massive margin. This is basically over a 20-point advantage for Hillary Clinton. They won. Joe Biden won them by something a little bit closer to 4 or 5 points. But here we have Trump up solidly about, 3 or 4 points now in this cycle. So they have hemorrhaged 18 to 39-year-old support. And finally, here's the one nobody really wants to talk about at all. And Trump is now losing by less than 30 points among black voters. And that is absolutely horrendous. The Democrats really can't afford to lose any more support among black voters, but just look at the blue and the red lines historically over the last 12 years. They have been hemorrhaging support here. So that's it, folks. It looks like the corporate media may be lying to you, maybe cherry picking left-leaning polls. Maybe some people are putting their thumbs on the scale when otherwise they normally might not be. But I can tell you, we are not putting our thumbs in the scale. Take a step back and look at this. Donald Trump has been massively beating Joe Biden, not just in our polling, but in a lot of people's polling almost this entire year. The entire time, everybody tells you that Kamala Harris is viewed as incompetent, has lower favorability numbers than Joe Biden, and has never outperformed him in polling. Now, all of a sudden, we're expected to be that she's doing 3 to 4 points better than Joe Biden in the aggregates. It does not hold water. If you want someone trustworthy and independent to tell you how it is, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll. Our Twitter is on fire right now, going into all of the stuff that's coming out about Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia 2020 election fraud. So our YouTube. But while we're talking about YouTube, please click the subscribe button, like the video, or if Rumble's more your thing, you can follow us there as well. You're not going to want to miss all of the new 2024 numbers we have coming out, as well as coming next week, numbers about this new stunner in the race, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Thanks for watching.